Okay, so section 4.7, we are finally here. We are talking about the one, the only, the quadratic formula. So you might have seen this before. That's okay if you haven't. I will show you. So there is a formula that will work every single time on how to solve for these quadratics that we've been doing. So some of the ways we've already talked about was solving by factoring. So that only works if it's factorable. We've talked about solving by taking the square roots, which doesn't always work, but sometimes it does, and sometimes that's faster if it does work. And then we've talked about solving by completing the square, and that only works if the first two terms are part of a perfect square trinomial. But this way works for everything. So it's going to be great. Just wait. So now that I've hyped it all up, let's go ahead and talk about the steps. So the first step is to put your quadratic into standard form. The ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And identify your a, b, and your c. Okay, not too bad. The second part is to find the discriminant. Now the discriminant is b squared minus 4 times a times c. So based on your discriminant, that determines the real solution, or how many real solutions there are. So if your discriminant is positive, there are 2 solutions. If your discriminant is 0, there's 1 solution. And if your discriminant is negative, there are no solutions. So I will explain why this is the way it is in just a second, but let's first talk about if it has 2 solutions. It may look something like that. What does it look like when it has 1 solution? Well, it just touches the x-axis, and when it has no solutions, it never touches the x-axis. All right, so now here is the quadratic formula. This is the last step. I want you to please rewind the video and sing it. Yes, I said that. I want you to sing it. Look out, American Idol. Here we come. So here is the quadratic formula. It's x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So I will sing that again for you. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So there's a bunch of different jingles that people do, but that's the one I do, and I love it. My Algebra 2 teacher made me sing it whenever I was in school, and I still remember it to this day. So I'm going to make you guys do it. If you're in class, I make you sing it. So let's solve one. First, we need to find the discriminant. Well, first we know the a is 1. I won't do this on all of them, but I'll just do it on this one. The b is negative 1, and the c is negative 20. So find your discriminant first. So remember, the discriminant is b squared minus 4ac, and that'll tell you how many solutions there are. Did you notice that the b squared minus 4ac is part of your quadratic formula? So really, I'm saving you a step. You don't have to do it this way. You could do it all at once, but this is just the way I'm teaching you. So do it this way while you're taking notes. Okay, so this will be negative 1 squared minus 4 times my a value times my c. Okay, stick all of that in a calculator. That would give you positive 81. So since my discriminant is positive, we set up here, since it's positive, that means there are 2 solutions. Okay, good. So now I have my quadratic formula. I already know the piece under the root. Sweet, so let's solve it. It's going to be, so x is going to equal our negative times our b term plus or minus the square root of our discriminant all over 2 times 1. So if we're going to solve this, this would be 1 plus or minus. Why is it plus or minus? Why do you think? Because there's a square root. You're exactly right. And square roots have positive and negative answers. So 1 plus or minus 9 divided by 2. So if we do 1 plus 9 over 2, that would be 10 over 2, so 5. So x equals 5 on 1. And 1 minus 9 over 2 is going to give you negative 8 over 2. So x is going to be equal to negative 4. So those are the two solutions. Okay, I'm going to show it to you a different way where I don't find the discriminant first and I just solve it. And you can pick your favorite way of how to do this. So I'm going to write them again. A is 2, B is 1, C is negative 21. Okay, so x equals negative, so negative 1 plus or minus the square root of my b term squared minus 4 times a times negative 21, our c, all over 2 times 2. Okay, so yes, there's a lot going on. You may prefer the other way to do it. Doesn't matter. So I'm going to put all of this in a calculator. And when I do, I get 169. Oops. So I get square root of 169 plus or minus negative 1 all over 4. So if our discriminant was positive, that means we're going to have two answers. Okay, so let's do it. The square root of 169 is 13. So this will be negative 1 plus or minus 13 over 4. So if I did the positive version, negative 1 plus 13 over 4 would have given me, what is that, 12, so 3. And then negative 1 minus 13 over 4 would give me negative 14 fourths, which equals to negative 7 halves. So x equals 3 is one answer, and x equals negative 7 halves is the other answer. So those are the roots, the solutions. Okay, this next one, letter C. Oh, what's wrong with this one? Well, it's not in standard form and there's not a 0 on one side. So let's move that 10r over to the other side. So it'll be 7r squared minus 10r minus 6 equals 0. All right, now I'm ready to solve it. So x equals negative 10 plus or minus the square root of negative 10 squared minus 4 times 7 times negative 6 all over 2 times 7. Whew, those are some big numbers. That's okay. If you want to work this out by hand, you can, but I wouldn't. So do what you want. Okay, so whenever I'm going to do the discriminant first. So just doing this piece right here. So I'll have positive 10 plus or minus. That gives me the square root of 268 all over 14. Okay, so 268 is not a perfect square. All right, so remember, if you have a radical, it's like a fraction. Can you simplify it? Well, let's look. 268. This may take you a while. I'm going to go fast because I'm trying to save time on this video, but I already know that's the square root of 4 and the square root of 67. And 67 is prime, so this would be 2 square roots of 67. So my answer is going to look something like this. Can we go ahead and work it out? No, we can't, because there's an irrational number in there and we can't solve an irrational number. So I want you to leave it as the square root of 67. But you can do one thing, and that is to simplify. So whenever you are simplifying or reducing these, you look at all three terms. So I'm not going to look at that square root of 67 because that's a radical, but that 2 out front is rational. So since that 2 is rational, I can reduce that. So I have 10 and 2 on top and 14. Can you simplify those? Well, yes, you can. You can divide all of them by 2, right? So your final answer is going to be x equals, divide everything by 2. So this will be 5 plus or minus the square root of 67 over 7. And that is your answer, because you can't simplify anymore, and I just want you to leave it just like that. You could break it up, but it's really not needed. Okay, let's move on to letter D. Good, it's already in standard form, so we don't have to do that piece. So let's just go ahead and get after it. X equals -4 plus or minus the square root of -4 squared minus 4 times my A times my C all over 2A. Okay, so I'm going to clean up my discriminant first. So x equals -4 is going to give me +4 plus or minus the square root of, when you type all of that in your calculator, it gives you -20 all over 6. Okay, so remember up here when I said the discriminant, and if it's negative, it is no solution. So by looking at this, why is it no solution? And the answer is because you cannot take the square root of a negative number. Well, you can, but you get an imaginary number, and I haven't taught you that yet. But for it to be a number, a real number, which is what we're trying to find, you cannot take a square root of a -20. So whenever you get here, and if you get the square root of a negative, stop, because your answer is no solution. Boom, you're done. You don't have to go any farther than that. Okay, we've got 3 more to do. Let's knock them out. So letter E, we have, it's already in standard form, so x equals -b plus or minus the square root of 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times -13 all over 2 times 1. Okay, I'm going to do my discriminant, so all of this. And that gives me, so I have -3 plus or minus, hopefully it's negative, it's not. That would be nice though. That would be positive, square root of +61 all over 2. Can you simplify the square root of 61? I don't believe so. I think 61 is prime. So we are finished. That is it. That's all. This is your answer because you can't simplify it any farther. There's no number out front of 61, so that is all she wrote, folks. Okay, next one, letter F. So we have x equals -9 plus or minus the square root of -9 squared minus 4 times 8 times -12 all over 2 times 8. So this would give me 9 plus or minus the square root of 465 all over 16. Okay, I just double checked. 465 is, you cannot simplify it. There are no factors. That is a perfect square. We've looked at again, so we are finished. That is our answer. Making it too easy on you guys. Oh, good. This next one doesn't have one like that. Okay, last problem. Where is it? All right. So, we got a first. Oh, this one's different. Yay. So, this is not, we could use, I'm going to show you 2 different ways to solve this. So, if I were going to, let's solve this by factoring. Or no, actually, sorry, by square root. So, let's add 8, 4x squared equals 16 divide by 4, divide by 4, x squared equals 4. Take your square root, so x equals plus or minus 2. Okay, say I wanted to solve this by using the quadratic formula. You shouldn't on this one because it'll take too long, but it's okay. We're going to do it just to show you that it does work. So I'm going to first put this in standard form. So that would be 4x squared minus 16 equals 0. So remember, your b term on this one is 0, and the a and c are there. So let's solve it. So x equals negative times 0 plus or minus the square root of 0 squared minus 4 times my a value times my c, all over 2 times 4. Okay, so, that's a negative 16. So this would be 0 plus or minus the square root of 256, all over 8. Turns out, fun fact, square root of 256 is 16. It is a rational one. So this is going to be 0 plus or minus 16 over 8. So that would be, if it was the positive version, so 0 plus 16 over 8 would give you 16 over 8, which is 2. And 0 minus 16 over 8 would be negative 16 over 8, so negative 2. Look at that, x equals 2 and x equals negative 2, the exact same thing we got over there. But as you can see, on this one, the quadratic formula does take a little longer, which is okay, but if you forget all of the other ways of solving these, you can always do it with the quadratic formula. So that is it for the quadratic formula. I hope you enjoyed it.